Mike McDermott. He's the CEO of Freshbooks. It's actually a tool that I used in my last business. He was another applicant speaker. I mentioned to you that we had over 75 applicants, 3 of which we took. So he definitely stood out with his story. He's got a great story of a lot of branding faux pas, some of the mistakes that they made early on in the Freshbooks branding. And I was really impressed because he came to me with 3 very easy to apply questions/lessons to make sure that your brand is actually matching the goal and the product that you're designing. So without further ado, I welcome Mike to the stage. Take it away, Mike. Sweet, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the story of a company that failed in making its biggest branding decision, but it still succeeded in going on to become number 2 in America for online accounting solutions. No one but Intuit QuickBooks has more paying customers than FreshBooks in America, and we did that despite making some of the following mistakes. So I'm going to walk you through that stuff. But I find it's helpful to have context. So before we get to the errors, let's sort of set the stage here and learn a little bit about some of the factors contributing to the mistakes we made along the way. FreshBooks was founded in January 2003 when I accidentally saved over an invoice. I had a small design agency, and I used Microsoft Word and Excel to bill my clients. And one day I accidentally basically clobbered an invoice. I overwrote one by accident and decided, you know what, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I set about building a simple online billing service that I shared with my customers, and they liked it. And it was an internal tool to start, and I started working on it with someone else, and we turned it into something that was more broadly available eventually. But the problems, if you will, began at that beginning period. Okay, so I had hacked something together, I brought someone else in, and myself and this guy Joe Sawato, who's my co-founder, we were very, very passionate about what we were doing. We started building a company. We were writing code, we were building a product. I didn't know anything about building a product company at that time. And we were totally caught up with it and loving it. And when you're starting a company, for those of you who've done that before or in the midst of it now, whether you know it or not, you're making decisions all the time. And many of them are sort of unconscious. You're setting a culture and other really important things. And some of them are more conscious. And so in our case, we were very busy, and we worked together for a year before we decided it was time to incorporate. And so we decided, eventually, I think Joe just kind of said, hey, we should probably put this thing to paper. And we hadn't launched or anything yet. And so I said, okay, let's do that. And very quickly, we put something to paper. But funny thing about filing documents for incorporation, you need a company name. And we didn't have one of those. And we were having tons of fun building all the stuff that we were building. And so I remember being on the phone with Joe, and we basically had this deadline of submitting these documents. And we had a very quick conversation, which was, what do you think the name should be? How about this? How about that? Okay, let's go with this. And we ended up picking a name, and that name was Second Sight. So off we go, we got incorporated. So that's good. So forget about that for a second, and we'll come back to it. So we've built this product. Now we're ready to launch it. May 2004, we launched FreshBooks, and or Second Sight, I guess it was called at the time. And nobody noticed. All right, nobody cared. We hadn't done any of the smart things people do, and that hopefully you're thinking about if you're building a business now, around building an audience maybe, so you have some customers in advance or people who are interested in what you're doing. We had none of that in place, and so we launched. Then we had to figure out how to get traffic to the website. We did that, and we were successful. And then, to an extent, modest success, because 8 months after launch, 2 years after being into this thing, we had 10 paying customers paying us $9.99 a month each. Okay. So Joe's got his doctorate in computer science. We brought on a friend of his who's an electrical engineer, a guy named Levi Cooperman, and myself. I left a really good business school in 4th year. And so, 3, by all accounts, should be effective people. We're making $100 a month in combined revenue, okay? And that wasn't even the mistake, right? So what do you do when you're, what do you do when you're there? Well, what we did is we moved into my parents' basement for 3.5 years. Okay, we wanted to keep things going. We really loved what we were doing. Okay, we were having fun every day showing up, and I think that's what it's about. If you're building something, you have a passion for it. You know, you can get through a lot of things. And so go along, and along the way, as Jonathan pointed out, great advice is to find mentors, okay, or advisors, and be forthright with them. And I met one along the way, a guy by the name of Pat Condon, who is one of the founders of Rackspace Hosting. And he is a wonderful guy. And I would occasionally reach out to him with questions. And one time we had a phone call about whatever it was, and he asked a simple question. He said, guys, have you ever thought about changing your name? And we said, no, we got a great name. Second Sight, it's excellent. We got off the phone, you know, probably had dinner that night, certainly went to bed at some point, and woke up the next morning. I called Joe, Joe called me. We called Pat and said, Pat, we have a terrible company name. And Pat said, yes, you do. And so he offered, he was like, listen, if you want to work on this, I'll work with you, and you can bring me some of your ideas as you go. And so we did. We followed up with Pat and bounced some ideas off him. And we called him about 4 or 5 days later, and we said, Pat, we got this thing licked. We got this whole company naming thing licked. You know, we're invoicing on the internet. We're going to call this company Online Invoicing. And so Pat kind of chuckled and said, guys, why don't you come back to me? And why don't I lay some breadcrumbs here? Let's think about what goes into a good name. All right, so there's a few things that go into a good name. It's easy to remember, right? You want your name to be easy to remember. It's easy to spell, so people don't have to struggle too hard to track you down if they're looking for you. Good names often describe your category, maybe your benefit, perhaps your difference. Okay, so those are a whole bunch of things a good name will do for you. And frankly, a great name will do all of those things for you. And so, you know, those are the things that you can use to help figure out what a good name is. And I was, you know, reflecting on those 5 things and comparing the word Second Sight, which has, let's see, 7 different ways you can spell it, because there's 2 ways you can represent second, 2ND, or S-E-C-O-N-D. There's Sight, S-I-T-E, S-I-G-H-T. So 7 permutations of the spelling. The name itself had no representation towards our category, our benefit, or our difference. It was, you'd never know what we did, right? You know, was it like, I don't know, palm reading, Second Sight? Like, what do you got, right? It didn't really make any sense for what we were doing. And we decided, you know, let's now apply ourselves more fully to trying to figure this out. And so we hunkered down, and we spent about an hour a day trying to figure out what a good name would be. And the way we did that, we kind of broke down the problem. We figured it would be a combination of words, because there's really 2 paths you can take when naming a company. You can go and take like an empty vessel, a word that has no meaning, and build meaning into it, like a Twitter. Or you can put together a couple words that are going to bring some of those meanings, bring you your category, your benefit, your difference, something like a PayPal, right, which has a whole bunch of that stuff worked into it. Really simple, easy to remember, easy to spell. And so we did all this work, and we eventually landed on Freshbooks. And then we had to go out and buy the domain name, okay? And I'm a big believer in .com domains. I think of it like real estate, right? If you're going to start a business and you want to be on Main Street, you know, you're going to be on the .com. I'm not a huge fan of, you know, all the funny URLs that are you know, popular today. And so we ended up spending $7,000 on the domain, which to me was a fortune at the time, but in hindsight was one of the best decisions we made. Okay, so messed up the name of the company. That's pretty bad, right? Fortunately, we had somebody who was sort of helping to advise us at the time, and he asked a good question. But what was really interesting to me was it wasn't just the name. So we started to think about what else, you know, as soon as we started looking at the name and we landed on Freshbooks, we realized there's a whole bunch of things that don't fit anymore. And so if you go in the Wayback Machine back to 2004, 2005, and you look at our website, it's like gray and navy blue. And what had happened was when we launched the second site, we really tried to put forward this impression of being basically like a bank, because we were helping people manage their financial information. And we thought, it's really important that we present this front, like we're good people, but the brand, it would be appropriate if this thing really felt like a bank, so people would feel confident using us and sort of trusted. So kind of gray and navy blue and things of that nature. And that really wasn't how we were as people. Like our personal brand was, Levi would be in the basement, wearing his shorts, writing software with probably his socks off under the table. And we went to the extent of trying to create this facade by having, we did a lot of customer service. So we always answered the phone. We had our phone number on our website. We weren't hiding. We had our phone number there. We had our address, but we were just presenting a brand that was kind of a little more draconian than we actually were. And Levi had created a character called Jeff Francis, who did all our customer service. He was doing all customer service. So from time to time, people call in and ask to speak with Jeff, and we didn't want anyone to think that our VP of operations was actually doing customer service. Okay, that's the kind of mindset, sort of early internet mindset that was there. And so I remember one day, Levi fielding a call, and he said, hello, Levi, and then somebody said, oh, may I speak with Jeff, please? And he kind of, he choked, basically, and they said, okay, can I put you on hold for a second? And then, spoke with them. And that's not right. That wasn't how we wanted to do things. And so when we renamed the company, we had this opportunity to kind of reinvent ourselves, right? And so we really shifted from being, sort of gray and navy blue and, no photos of people, and you can't find out more information, and you have an imaginary character named Jeff Francis who did wonderful customer service, to a new way of looking at things where our photos for everyone on the team are on the website, and it basically just completely reversed it. And today, everyone who starts at FreshBooks spends a month in customer service, whether you're an executive or it doesn't matter, any role. And we're very proud of that, and we go back periodically to reacquaint ourselves with our customer and the pain we feel there. So we sort of kind of come full circle on all that stuff. So I think when I look back at all that stuff, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because we learned a bunch, right? We learned what goes into a good name, and we will inevitably be creating other brands and such going forward, and those lessons are now deeply ingrained. And brand matters, and we know more about who we are, and we're true to ourselves. And actually, I should mention this, is I think it's really helped with recruiting and the culture at the place, right? Because there's no disconnect between how we are online and how we are. And I love when people meet people who work at FreshBooks out in the world and tell me this stuff, because they almost invariably do. Really nice, just like the website, no dissonance there, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So when I think about this, really fundamental lessons that we can carry forward with us, which actually kind of reminds me of another story where we made a change to our website, and it cost us $1 million. That wasn't so good, but that's another story. So that is my talk, folks. Thank you for having me. You're welcome, Cass. I will say I don't remember the 3 things I shared with you, but maybe they'll come out if we get some questions.
Can I? That was too juicy. Give us the second part. 1 million.
No, can't do
Give
it.
us the
Gotta stay
5-second
focused here.
blurb.
It's important to stay focused when you're building a company. I got to stay here. That's another talk for another day. Yeah. Sorry, hate to be that guy, but there we go.
Okay. Hi, my name is Julia, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the transition for your customers between the first and second name and how you brought them along, and whether you got their input along the way, or what the messaging was.
I was just going to say, I don't know if, I was just going to say, I don't know if that's a plan. Okay. Well, I took that part of the story out because I didn't want to talk too much about us. But here we go. So, turning lemons into lemonade is an important thing to do, right? And so we'd recognize that we had a bad name, we were going to change it. And with that comes a bunch of hairballs, because we already had about 50,000 people who were using our service, right? So this install base, and you get kind of committed to something. Your customers know you like this. You're building a brand. And we said, okay, well, how are we going to deal with this? So what did we do? Well, as a matter of fact, we murdered our brand in an 8-episode serial murder mystery, which we emailed to our customers and posted on our blog week by week, leading up to the name change. There were some prizes, so folks who, the first person to guess the correct, I guess, assassin, murderer, would win a prize, and we had an opportunity to write an alternative ending. And the characters were all members of the team of the company at the time, so there's about sort of 6 of us. So that was kind of really the start of, hey, let's kind of show you our true colors, let's do this a little differently. And it was a wonderful, there was no dissonance for people when we made the switch. People loved it, we got good responses, and it was really clear. So that's what we did. So you think this is a terrible thing? I think the lesson there, and I've learned it many times over the years, is do not be afraid to communicate with your customers, right? It will actually save you so much difficulty. And you think, you have software. I was on the phone this morning. We're going to write a fix because basically we're going to use communication to buy us some time on a software fix. There's nothing broken. There's nothing wrong. But you can use web applications, mobile applications, text. You can use communication very effectively to help you save a bunch of time if you do a good job with it. Anyways, it worked out well for us that time. Thank you for the question.
Any other questions on branding? Marketing? I have a question right here.
So say you're doing a startup, and so you don't have this problem of having already established a brand, but you don't have money to hire a professional, and hypothetically speaking, you don't have a lot of creativity yourself. Are there any ways to, is there a crowdsourcing, like 99 Designs for logos? How might one go about finding a good name and maybe branding strategy?
I'm not going to lie to you. I don't have a great answer for that. Okay, and that's because we have sort of rolled our own. We built our own and sort of iterated along the way. It sounds as though you may want to work with a marketing or advertising company who could help you with that. I understand the fiscal constraints. Or alternatively, let me take that in another direction. Are you founding a company now? Yes, you are founding a company. So it sounds as though there's an opportunity for you to add somebody to your team, whether it be a co-founder or something along these lines, that is a nice complement to you. Right? So when you're building that starting team, you don't want people who are just like you. You want complements. And if you have the self-awareness to know maybe you're not great at everything, then to look for those complements is a wonderful thing. So that might be another approach.
Any other questions?
CrowdSpring actually does naming as well, crowdspring.com. So you can just write in a bunch of parameters and a whole lot of people give you ideas.
There's a program called Lexity Company Name Generator that generates names by algorithm.
How many people in the audience feel like they are especially creative or good at coming up with names? There you go.
So I want to talk about this for 1 second, right? Because you have to be smart and save money or really most likely you do, unless you have gobs of somebody else's money, right? And even then, I encourage you to think about being smart and saving money when you can. We were able to create a really structured approach, some constraints. We know good names have this. We know names are made up of words. Let's brainstorm words. We literally brainstormed words as categories. We almost took the creativity out of the process and just spent the time. Right? And I think that I think you can overcome a lot of problems if you just try and break them down like that. You have a lot of things to do, and so it doesn't mean you have to solve every single problem, but I think if nothing else, take from this story that brand kind of matters, name kinds of matters, and save yourself the cycles, make the investments now of your time and effort to figure out what's right for you.
Mike, you talked about how you did me an activity where you just toss out words to each other, descriptive word, emotional word.
Yeah, so we did an exercise where the words were sort of thrown out there. We literally took 1 hour a day for about 2.5 weeks, and we brainstormed words for our category. So billing, invoicing, accounting, bookkeeping, and we went on and on and on. We got out the New York Times crossword puzzle book to try and get other ideas and thesauruses and all this, and we just kept going. And we just slew of names, and we didn't judge the words. We just put them we actually put them in an Excel spreadsheet, and we just captured them. And then we went to benefit. And then we went to difference, and we did the same exercise, and we kept going. And at the end of each day, we'd look at GoDaddy and see which of these are available. Freshbooks.com was not available, and we made an offer to the folks there. So, you can sort of structure your thinking, and it's a process. Most creative things, the sneaky little thing about creative people, like most creative things have a process. I think of developing software as one of the most creative activities in the world. There's a process to developing software, right? And you go work inside an ad agency or putting together a piece of creative. There's a production schedule. There's a process there. So try and think of things in a structured way, and maybe that'll help.
Time for one more question. What's the question? One more. Oh, I got one right there.
Hi, I'm Conrad. I've got a startup by myself, and I was just wondering, you were talking about the story that you had like 10 paying customers, and creating. How did you overcome that? How did you end up having 50,000 people using your software, still having a bad name? Because that wasn't the problem, right?
How did we overcome that? So, based in Toronto, working out of my parents' basement, paid myself 19 grand for like 3 years in a row, right? Paid other people. By all accounts, like failing, right? All the way along. And so how did you work that out? How did you overcome it? Perseverance. But perseverance is not so hard if you love what you're doing, okay? And so we really loved and believed in what we were doing. And we were not in it for the money. We were in it to build something, okay? I am hell-bent on building a big technology company based in my hometown of Toronto now. I want to be an anchor tenant so other companies like it get built. But all of that has evolved sort of over time, and it all happened because we stuck with it. We stayed focused. The hardest part in those years for me was not starting one of the 500 other businesses I thought up. I came dangerously close a bunch of times. So having that focus and sticking with it because I really liked the people we were working with, and the customers seemed to give us good feedback even if they weren't paying us.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cass.
Thank you as well. Thank you.